Qatar has got this 2030 vision of where they want to be by 2030 in terms of sustainability. One of those obviously is energy, but the other is thinking about, we are a very small population of 100,000 Qataris. What can we do to make sure that we have, a sustainable society in 2030? We need to make sure our expats are happy and want to stay, and
Right.
they've got a good quality of life, because without the expats, what will we do?
Welcome to Coffee and Geography, where my guests and I geek out about the world and everything on it, discovering that we are all geographers in some way, shape or form. I'm your host, Kit, and my pronouns are they, them or she, her. So settle down with a brew, hit that subscribe or follow button, and enjoy the listen.
This podcast is sponsored by the World Energy and Meteorology Council, or WEMC for short. WEMC is an international organisation focused on weather and climate data to support energy transition, and we also work with educators. WEMC have created Teal, an easy-to-use free visualisation tool that enables you to explore climate variables for the past 70 plus years. Get started at tealtool.earth. Find us at wemcouncil.org and follow us on Twitter at wemcouncil.
Hello everyone, so we're back to regular programming this week, if you like. I hope you enjoyed last week's special episode on location at the Geographical Association conference. If you haven't listened to that, please do so. But before you go and do that now, wait until this conversation is done, because this is going to be really amazing, because I have someone joining me from Doha, Qatar. Good afternoon or good evening, Emily Butler.
Hi there, Kit. How are you?
I am doing very, very well. Now, Emily, just as we were having a chat before you started, because of course it's the month of Ramadan, it's just started, and you said that the sun has just set, because you are 2 hours ahead of us, so it's around about 6:15 there now where you are, and you said right now, because the sun has just set, you just heard in the background in the distance.
The call to prayer. Yeah, it's so beautiful being here and being around it. It is probably one of my favourite months out here in Qatar. Now, of course, the last 2 years we've been in COVID, where there's been really serious restrictions. So we've not been able to, embrace the festivities of the month that we normally would. But this year we're back in school 100%. So all of the students are obviously fasting. And we get to be part of that, and they're educating us, and I really like that. They come into school and they explain to me why they're fasting, what the kind of sentiment behind it is, which is fantastic. But like you just said, where I live, we've got a mosque right next to us, so we get to hear the call to prayer every evening, and obviously when the prayer times are as well.
Wow. So I wonder if does it have the same impact as, for me, where I used to live in Norwich, we used to live right by what was called Britannia Barracks, which is on the top of Tetley, and they used to ring their bells every now and then, and the chimes in the barracks, and it was actually a really, really lovely sound, and I kind of loved listening to it in the background. And I'm not a spiritual person at all. I'm an atheist, and I have my own spirituality, if you like. I mean, if people say, if sci-fi was a spiritual experience, then probably that. but seriously, you do get that kind of almost spiritual experience when you listen to kind of things like that. Do you get that kind of sense sometimes?
Yeah, absolutely. It is a real beautiful thing. I agree with you. I am not religious at all. I've not been brought up in a religious setting. However, my husband, his father is a priest. So, when we got married, we got married in his dad's church, which was fantastic. And that's kind of brought a new sense of religion to me. Although I don't necessarily practice, the values behind why people practice and why people believe in religion is something that actually I've really reconsidered. So it's really nice when the students kind of sit and explain to me why their practices are the way they are, or why they do certain things within their religion. I actually sit and reflect, and I go, actually, that's a really amazing thing. And I wish to some extent that I had been brought up with that when I was younger, because I think it might have helped me to focus more on my education, or focus more on different aspects of my life. And I do think now, if I was to ever go through, something of a crisis or something really difficult in life, I would call upon some kind of spiritual aspect, because it helps you with, thinking there's a higher power, or thinking someone can actually help you with something.
Yeah, I kind of have that. Yeah, I do have that feeling myself. It's interesting, and I think it's, I wouldn't say underappreciated, but I think it's a misconception that folks like us who are atheists or folks who are agnostic cannot feel it that way in any shape or form. Because I think human beings themselves can be, spiritual, whether it's looking inward as well as looking outwards. Like speaking to the wonderful Adil Hussain in India, the actor, he was talking about, his spiritual journey, about the looking within, finding happiness within. And finding spirituality in nature around us, which is amazing. Which is why he was on the podcast, which was brilliant. But Emily, I got so into talking to you about when you were saying, "Oh, we've just had the call to prayer," that I actually haven't introduced you yet. So we already had a little bit of clues in what we've just been talking about. But Emily, you love traveling, you love nature and animals, and this has encouraged her to see the world. Emily teaches internationally in Qatar and teaches the International Baccalaureate and the International GCSE Edexcel. Emily has implemented eco schools into her previous and current schools, and I'm going to be interested in how you're doing that in Qatar, and has recently taken on the role of head of house. And you enjoy teaching topics such as climate change, coast and hazards, which is very much close to my heart as well. So, yep. And as I've just put here, a little note is just make sure that everybody listening, any of Emily's students or friends or anybody in Qatar listening, Ramadan Mubarak to all of you and everybody who is celebrating that and going through that process this month. So yeah. Finally managed to introduce you. I almost forgot. So, Emily, I've noticed that you've got your nice mug with you then. So what are you drinking? What have you brought to the conversation in your mug?
I have brought my tea. I cannot go a day without a cup of tea. It's got my cats on it, obviously.
Yep.
And it says something like, "My best friend has 4 legs," which could not be more accurate.
So what are you drinking? Is it something imported from here? Is it something you get in Qatar?
Yeah, this is my Tetley tea bags that I buy in a store here called Megamart, which literally has everything from like Tesco or Marks and Spencer's imported into it. So extremely expensive, but nonetheless very needed.
Yeah, seriously. Whenever I go to the States, it's like to see family and friends. It's like you go into like the special international section of these giant supermarkets, right? And like you look for the Tetley, and they do have Tetleys, and it's like $8 for a small box of Tetleys. It's like, what? So I do stash my own in the luggage and take it over.
I know.
Yeah, you have to.
Just on a side note, I came back from the UK the other day, and I got stopped at customs. Something flagged up in my suitcase, and Easter eggs out here in Qatar are ridiculous. They're like £20. So embarrassingly, I had to undo my suitcase and sift through it. And I kid you not, I had about 15 kilograms of Easter eggs in there. So the customs officer was like sifting through these Easter eggs, like, "Do you just really like chocolate?" And I was like, "Yeah."
Wait. 15 kilos of Easter eggs, because folks, if you don't know Easter eggs, the commercial Easter eggs, they're hollow.
Yeah.
So
I know it was just filled with Easter eggs, like Easter eggs and mini eggs, just bags of Easter chocolate. Yeah, it was funny now I look back on it, but at the time I was so embarrassed that it had flagged up and all that was in my suitcase was Easter chocolate.
Well, folks, if you've got any strange customs stories, you should definitely tag us on Twitter about that in response to Emily's one. And I can share one, actually. It was when I in season 1, I spoke to 4 ex-students that I took to the United States. Very lucky. We went to Yellowstone. And I was very clear with them, that some of them hadn't even traveled before internationally, right? So I was like, you can't take this through customs, you can't blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. And everything was going fine. We were going through checking and stuff like that, and we were pulled aside for extra checks. That's fine. There's a bunch of us as kids, students, all that kind of stuff. They probably thought, well, we just want to double check everything. Around comes this sniffer dog, cute thing, but I know as a child of a parent who had a working dog and as a family pet as well, a police dog, You don't interrupt them. You just let them get on with their job, right? As
Yeah.
much as you want to go, oh, you're so cute. So we're just waiting for this little thing, and it jumps and barks at one of the kids, right? I'm like, oh, what's gone on here? It's like worse. It's not going to happen. Worse fears. They're not smuggling anything. You know that's not going to be the case. These kids are not like that, right? But you're like, what on earth? And so he's been pulled aside. His bag's been complete tour. Everything's going up, things like that. And at the bottom of his bag, he forgot to take it out from his school lunch one day, was a mouldy banana.
Oh no.
So this dog had detected this fermenting banana at the bottom of his bag that he hadn't taken out for about 2 weeks or a week, and that's what we got pulled over in this American airport for. So yeah, Devon, we're not going to let you live that one down.
That's that.
So with customs, loads of fun. So you said you just come back from the UK then. So what part of the UK are you from?
So I grew up in Suffolk, but when we go back to the UK now, we go back to Liverpool because that's where my husband's family live.
Oh, okay. So Suffolk. So I'm currently in South Norfolk. I'm right on the River Waveney, so on the Norfolk Suffolk border. So whereabouts in Suffolk then?
Sudbury, Great Cornage.
Okay, yeah, right.
Yeah.
So not too far. I mean, this seems like a very wide open area of the UK. Norfolk and Suffolk are quite big counties, but really, it's. I mean, you know, Emily, it's quite insular here. It's everyone seems to know everybody. Which is a bit bizarre with the way that Norfolk and Suffolk people seem to be. So yeah, Sudbury not too far away. That's great. So you're. Is there any part of I'm not going to do it, like going down the road or anything like that. I just did. I'm so sorry, Emily. Is there any part of like Suffolk or maybe even from your partner's side from Liverpool, has that come with you to Doha at all? And I don't know. It's like, is your UK identity, your East of England identity, like quite strong there? Do people comment on that or?
I wouldn't say so because I would say that my accent is pretty generic of like South England. I wouldn't say that you would.
Estuary English, as I think they call it.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that you speak to me and go, "Oh my goodness, you are from Suffolk."
Not very many people do, though.
Yeah, but I mean, like, I was watching this video a few months ago, and it was like Suffolkisms, and one of them was like on the huh, which is like when you're a little bit wonky, and or like buh. So like I'll be like, "Oh, you're right, buh," to like my husband and things. And there, I guess Suffolkisms that if you were from Suffolk or Norfolk that you would kind of pick up, but otherwise people have never heard of any of those kinds of phrases. So I wouldn't say that my identity necessarily comes out in the way that I am. I would say that my English identity as a whole does, because like I love tea and I speak, as the kids tell me, like the Queen, or like I'm from Harry Potter.
Yeah.
And yeah, like for me, my Suffolk identity is the fact that I love greenery, I love animals, I love fresh produce.
Yes,
I love farms, I love Waitrose.
Yeah.
And yeah, like those things are like integral in me. So there comes a point where I get really kind of claustrophobic in the desert because I'm like, I just want to go and walk in fields and fields and fields with nobody around me, with loads of greenery and loads of trees and stuff. And you just don't get that here. Now there's parks and stuff and they've got the beautification and they've put all of this greenery in, but it's still not the same because you're walking around and it's 40 degrees
Right.
with some palm trees around you. So it is still lovely, but the air's never fresh. It's polluted and it's not real greenery, if you understand what I'm saying.
Wow, yeah, that's actually a really, really interesting way to put it, because obviously being in the same part of anywhere, and I think most people in the UK, especially if they live out towards the, in the boonies and in the rural areas, will probably identify with what you're saying. But being that someone can just walk 10 minutes outside of my house and I'm in that landscape that you just described, we're walking through, your public rights of way through the farms and then, popping into your farm shop, getting your local produce and stuff like that. And if you're missing anything, just nip to Waitrose, as you said, whatever. But I never really thought about that in terms of, in places like in locations in the world that where you are, where that greenery is at best artificial, that
Yeah.
must be a huge, part of your identity, part of your sense of self, which is missing there. Because you probably
Yeah.
get a sense that it's artificial, a sense that it's not real, a sense that this is not the same as that rolling, because it's not totally flat here, folks. That's a myth. It's quite rolling and undulating here in the east of
Yeah.
England. So that you've not got that freshness, and don't you, when they're mucking the fields, like that's what they're
Yeah.
starting to do around now. Be getting that lovely whiff, Emily, of the mucking the fields around here. Oh yes, when the wind is in the right direction. But even that tells you that that sense of nature, that farming produce, and that that's it. I'm home. I'm in my location, and to not have that is something I've not really thought about.
So I grew up in kind of such rural corner that I'd go around the corner to my friends who, family owned a farm, and we'd roll the hay bales. And
Right.
I like in the summer, and I tell my husband this, and he's like, "Shut up! Did you do that?" And I'm like, "Yeah, we did, because that was just something that you did in the summer, and we had the Young Farmers Society, and I literally went to my prom in a tractor because that was part
Yes.
of our village
Yes.
identity." Do you know what
Yep.
I mean? Like that is just part of life in the rural part of Suffolk. It's very farmers' land, and I say these things and it comes out and people are like, "That's so weird." It's the weirdest thing.
I can tell you that is truly a thing, folks. The school that I taught at for a long, long time, just outside of Norwich, they did the exact same thing, pulling up at like Dunstan Hall or anything like that in their tractors. If yes, it happens. It's a thing. Yeah. So imagine that your partner being from Liverpool, being from that major urban area,
Yeah.
is like, seriously, you're such a parody of yourself.
I know, genuinely.
Well, there you go. So, okay, so let's flip that question around then. So, being in Doha, Qatar, you've already kind of alluded to the things that you really, really love about it, and
Yeah.
so in a hypothetical sense, when if you ever were to move back to the UK, to Liverpool, stuff, wherever it may be, is there going to be any part of Qatar that's going to like stick with you, and you're going to be bringing back with you as kind of within yourself?
Yeah, I think, I've had to completely reframe my teaching in the sense that I teach with, you know, in a classroom probably 90% EAL students. So I've had to completely change the way that I teach to ensure that everybody can access my content, down to the little things of the topics that we teach. When I first arrived, we were teaching rivers to students that had never seen a river before because we
Of
don't have any
course,
rivers in Qatar.
right.
And I was telling my year 11s today, because we do coast now, and I was like, yeah, I spoke to my husband, who's my head of department, and I said, why are we teaching rivers? It's not relatable. Like, we can't show them a photo of a river here. We can't take them out to a river here. So why are we teaching them something that they can't relate to? It's not their landscape. So we're now teaching them coast, which is fantastic, because obviously we're a peninsula and there's
Mm,
coasts everywhere. You just
yeah.
go to the end of the country and there's a coast, right? And even like, the urban topic we do, I've had to completely rethink how we teach things like the Burgess model, for example. Like
Right.
a Doha doesn't fit any kind of urban model. So how do you explain the Burgess model to these kids that are in front of us? So we've had to really sit down and think about context of where you are in your school. So I think absolutely that's something that I would always consider now when I go back to teaching, if I do, inshallah, in the future to the UK. I will always be thinking about, well, is this topic completely relevant to these students? Do we
Right.
need to maybe rethink, is it current? There was stuff on the system that clearly hadn't been looked at for 5-6 years that was totally uncurrent. Or, like, there's a big movement on Twitter, isn't there, about decolonizing geography. It's so
Absolutely.
important to make sure you're going through your content and you're not, redistributing any kind of misconceptions. It's so important, isn't it?
That's something I hadn't really. Well, I kind of I'm definitely someone who's always subscribed to context, to bring in the student's lived experience as much as you possibly can. And one of the things that I did when I first took over as head of department was to say, okay, what parts of the syllabus, what parts of the curriculum can the students not identify with, and if we have to do it, how can we make it relevant and in context to their lives? So I'm a big fan of like techniques like, for example, scaled down stimulus versus full scale stimulus, where you give them like a parallel stroke analogous kind of situation in their real life, which they can then perhaps translate into something which is not, they can't really, so there's things like that. But it's hard work. It's hard work, especially because of the subject that we teach. I mean, again, I've said it many, many times because I'm lucky enough that I do have international listeners, is that the way that geography gets taught in our systems, in the UK system or in international school system a lot, is that you bundle in almost a lot of things in an intersectional manner. And there's going to be so many things in there that the kids can identify with, but there is so much more that they can't identify with. And because it's so broad, rivers is a staple of geography, but to teach that in Qatar, you're absolutely spot on, Emily. Why would you? So I mean, maybe, I don't know, underground aquifers instead. Desert water systems, which underground rivers systems maybe, but not surface runoff rivers. Which is, that's really, really fascinating.
And there's even things that we do a lot of trying to relate it back to Qatar's rapid development and the World Cup. We're constantly banging on about Qatar's sustainability vision 2030, 2022 World Cup. And it's actually so crazy to me that I've been here, just shy of 3 years. And when I got here, the World Cup felt so far away. And, on Friday night, my husband and I were watching the World Cup draw. Now, I'm going to completely diverge and go on a tangent again, but my husband is the most fluky person in the world. So he really wants tickets to the World Cup, of course. So his thought process was, I'm not going to go for England because everybody's going to go for England for the 7 games for the UK.
Okay.
So I'm going to go for a really left field team like Ecuador. So he got all the tickets for Ecuador, which amazing. Like loads of people didn't get their tickets because they went for England. And then when we were watching the World Cup draw, their first game's against Qatar. So he's going to go to the opening game for the World Cup.
That is jammy.
So I was sat there like, how have you managed this? This is crazy. Like just from thinking, I'm just going to go for a team like Ecuador.
And Ecuador could have been drawn in England's group for all you, as well.
Yeah, they could have done.
But, so I think it's England, USA, Iran, and it's going to be one from Wales, Scotland, or Ukraine.
Yeah.
Because Wales, Scotland, and Ukraine are in the same playoff bracket as each other. And as much as I want to see as many of the home nations reach the World Cup finals, I think a lot of people will be rooting for Ukraine.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And, we were watching the interview with Gareth Southgate, and he was saying, we're not making this political, we'll do everything we can to help Ukraine get there, but they'll deserve it just as any other team deserves it. We're not trying to make it a political device of who deserves it more and who doesn't deserve it more. But I totally agree with you that if Ukraine get it, then absolutely fantastic, because it's just something for everyone to be able to look forward to, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think the Ukrainian team themselves would want to earn it on merit as well. And I think the Scottish and Welsh, they're kind of in a no lose situation really, because they'll either win through the playoffs and get to the World Cup final, and they'll be happy as pie because they've. Let's face it, you Welsh and Scottish friends, you don't have much success with and then but if they lose out to Ukraine, maybe that'll be some solace for them. But so maybe they've got the best and the worst situation, if you know what I mean. But it's for because of course your husband is a massive football nerd. He's as we were just about to start recording. He was in his football kit ready to go and play football. We cannot have any conversation with you in Qatar without talking about the World Cup. You just naturally brought it up yourself, and it's something that I taught as something on the horizon with regards to when I taught about. This is what I wanted to ask you, Emily, because before I use this term, is that of course the most common term is the Middle East,
Yes.
the vast. But there is a movement at the moment to say, well, we shouldn't be using the Middle East because it's a very colonial term. Perhaps we should be using the geographical term of West Asia or Western Asia instead. Is there any? Have you even heard of that as an alternative? Do folks there really care? It's called the Middle East, or
No, I think there's a deep sense of identity in being Arab. So we call it the Gulf region
okay,
or the Arab nations. So I mean, the actual people who are Arab or from the Middle East would never refer to themselves as Middle Eastern. I think you're right; it's a very Western term or a very British term. But I hadn't actually really reflected on it myself. I guess because I'm out here, I don't necessarily say, "Oh, here in the Middle East." I would say here in the Gulf or here
right.
in Arabia. I guess we call it out here.
Okay, that's really interesting. 'Cause I think just that little thought a lot of people have had actually, because
Yeah,
especially as you mentioned, the decolonial circles. That's a conversation that has to be like, what do we call this part of the world? And yeah, there's a debate about. Well, the first thing, and I always say, well, why didn't you ask the people who live there?
yeah, no, absolutely.
Okay, cool. Okay, right. So now that I've established that, so for the area, the Arabian Peninsula, that part of the world,
Yeah,
I used to teach a whole unit on it, and we did a complete lesson that focused on the sustainability of Qatar. Well, actually, it was sustainability of Dubai in the United Arab Emirates, and I used to use the snippet from Mission Impossible with Tom Cruise climbing on the Burj Khalifa as like the opening as the starter activity, like to them to describe, like what the urban development of Dubai and things like that. And then there's like the world record attempt for the highest eagle flight or highest trained eagle flight, where the eagle set off from the top of the Burj Khalifa and then had a camera mount on its head and then circled down to the trainer's arm, which was amazing. So I used those two videos as a starter. Then the following lesson to go off, okay, what about the Qatar World Cup? Is that sustainable? Or
yeah,
Qatar as a country? And we used the World Cup as a kind of an assessment of not just environmental sustainability, but it's social and economic. And of course, as we've been hearing quite a fair lot, the build up to the Qatar World Cup, the focus on human rights. And there was for this unit, this front loading, this prelude is relevant, everybody. I'm not just rambling, right? Which I know I do sometimes. So in January 2014, there was a fantastic article in the National Geographic magazine, and it was called "Far From Home." And all it was about migrant workers mostly in the UAE.
yeah,
But then I applied it to Qatar because, of course, there are migrant workers working in Qatar, and particularly on the World Cup. And the fact it said of the 2.1 million people in Dubai, only 1 in 10 is Emirati. It's
yeah.
incredible. And the rest are migrants working on temporary contracts. And I added this little thing because I need to put Qatar's, but around 80% of Qatar's population are migrants. And in most cases, these folks will never be offered Emirati or Qatari citizenship. So, which is incredible. Of course, a lot of things happen is that they go to work and they send their money, the remittance,
Yeah.
back home. So mostly a lot of these people are from the Philippines and whatnot. So I don't know. What can you comment on that, Emily?
So
Can you see with your own eyes and your own experience?
yeah, of course, it's very evident that it is a majority expat country. Only 100,000 of the population are Qatari. There's a very low percentage of the population of the 2.9 million people that live here.
Wow.
When we,
Wow.
it's such a fantastic thing to discuss in the classroom, though, because I've just finished population with year 7, and we looked at migration, and we looked at all the different ethnicities within the classroom, and we reflected, and we were talking about things like, what are the push factors and the pull factors from your home country and the host country being Qatar. And obviously a lot of the reasons that people are here is due to money. The income is so much better than their home countries, so of course that's attractive. You want to have a better quality of life, you're going to go to that place that will help you access that, especially if you've got families back in your home country that rely on your remittance for education or whatever the money is used for. And yeah, of course there's a lot of that the population that are from countries that are maybe not as wealthy as Qatar, and then people are maybe put into certain jobs in society that Qataris or maybe other people from other countries wouldn't do. So a lot of people come out and they are Uber drivers, or they come out and they work in hotels, or there's a big thing here of like takeaway drivers. So like they're on their motorbikes and they bring you your food. And obviously in the UK, when I left in 2018 or 2019, we didn't, in Canterbury where I was living at the time, we didn't have people that came on a motorbike and brought you your dinner. Like I'd never really seen that before. So it's convenience, isn't it? And it's cheap, so you use that. And yeah, there's obviously conversations surrounding the way that things have been, built in Qatar in terms of the World Cup. And there's a lot of media kind of speculation surrounding it. And of course, maybe there are practices that are not considered ethical in the way that we would in the UK. But that Qatar has made a really big effort and movement towards making sure that that's not the case anymore, or they're trying very hard to make sure that there are really strict laws in place to make sure that people are protected. And the media doesn't ever talk about that, and I'm not defending either side, but I do think it is an important conversation on information, misinformation.
Right.
Where are you getting your sources from? Yes, that is true in some cases, but what are they doing in response to make sure that that's not the case moving forwards? And I know that I think maybe 2015, 2016, they brought in a law where, people can't take passports from people anymore. That's modern day slavery. That's not
Yes.
okay, and that is illegal now in the country. Now, I'm not saying that things don't happen, but they are reflecting and they are moving towards trying to have better practices to make sure that something like the World Cup is built sustainably. And obviously when we're in the classroom and we're talking about sustainability is not just the environment. Sustainability is about our economy and our society socially, and what are we doing to make sure that people are benefiting from this environmental sustainability. And I think, Qatar has got this 2030 vision of where they want to be by 2030 in terms of sustainability. One of those obviously is energy, and I'm sure we'll talk about that in a moment. But the other is thinking about, well, we are a very small population of 100,000 Qataris. What can we do to make sure that we have a sustainable society in 2030? We need to make sure our expats are happy and want to stay, and that they've got a good quality of life, because without the expats, what will we do?
Hi folks, a chance for you to recharge your brew, but also a polite prod to remind you that it's so easy to support this podcast. Simply liking, sharing, rating and reviewing means that it will get on more people's radar. Also, there are a few links down in the description which may be of mutual benefit. Please do check them out. So before we move on to the last bit I want to talk about, it's going to be loads of fun. What do you think then about this World Cup? I mean, what level of it do you think is sustainable? I mean, because you mentioned you're doing about eco schools. In a country awash with oil, can a school ever be eco-friendly? Can the World Cup have any environmental aspect to it?
We with the eco schools, I've worked really hard with members of my school to try and really set it alight and get kids keen, and the kids are keen. These kids are international. They've got a real awareness of their surroundings, of different countries, of what's right and what's wrong, and they do recognize that they're in a country that is funded by gas, gas and oil, and that's what a lot of the money is earned from. And I always say to the kids, if you can get gas for super cheap, are you gonna fund your solar panels out in the desert that are really expensive? Probably not. It's not necessarily their priority right now, but it's my responsibility, I think, as a geography teacher, to educate the students about, well, okay, we're fine now, but are we going to be fine in 10 years? Are we going to be fine when I have children? Are we going to be fine when you have children? And actually, we really need to make sure that we're doing the right thing now so that everybody has the same opportunity. We're very lucky of all of the experiences that we can have now with, very low impact of climate change at the moment. But in 10 years, in 15 years, is it going to be the same? Are we going to see the Maldives are flooded and you're never going to be able to go to the Maldives should you want to go to the Maldives? Is there going to be massive wildfires in the UK and that you're not going to be able to go and walk in the woods or whatever? And I'm digressing a little bit, but the kids have been really keen, and we're trying all of different things across school. We're trying to focus on waste and energy in particular, and biodiversity. So obviously, like I've kind of alluded to before, it's not an awful lot of green space. So we're trying to integrate trees and greenery and encourage wildlife into our kind of pitch area at the back. We're trying to do lots of different things to encourage people to obviously turn off the AC and the lights when they leave the classroom. That sounds so basic, but lots of people don't turn off their projectors and they don't turn off their AC when they leave the classroom.
Right.
And that's incredible energy that you're wasting there. We're really, really trying with recycling. It's not really a thing here in Qatar at the moment, which was very painful for me when I got here, because I'm so used to being like, this goes in this bin and this goes in this bin and this goes here, and we go to the bottle bank, and we recycle our clothes here and all of that kind of stuff. And it's getting better, and there are places that you can go to recycle things, but it's an effort. So we're trying to put a group of students together to make sure that effort is put in place. We are recycling our paper, we are recycling our plastic. And another event that we did in September was the Qatar Sustainability Week, which was a big event in Qatar. Lots of businesses and big corporate companies were coming together to say, we're doing this to be more sustainable, we're doing that. And we had a company come in to school, which was a construction company for one of the World Cup stadiums. Okay. And they talked all of the kids through all of the different things that they're trying to do to make them more sustainable. So one of the stadiums, Rasbur Stadium, which has now changed its name, and I don't want to say it wrong, so I'm just going to say the Rasbur Stadium. It's made of containers. So old containers from container ships. They've made the whole stadium out of that. And then at the end of the World Cup, they are going to send those containers to places that need them for building or creating apartments or whatever in other parts of the world. They've got obviously the architectural designs in Qatar. If you look at the old souks and things, they've got particular ways of building the souks that allow for wind to create natural air conditioning, because obviously before the 1970s or whatever, when they got an electric grid here, they had no AC units, so they had to build their buildings to create something to create that wind. So they're trying to use all of those kind of architectural experiences from their ancestors and the cultural heritage within the country in their designs for the stadiums. And again, recycling, making sure that they're using low energy alternatives. There's solar panels on the top of some of the stadiums as well, which obviously isn't going to offset the whole event, but it's more steps that are being taken than maybe people would have even imagined in a country like Qatar.
And that's we're gonna have to put that. I'll have to find out about that stadium and stick the link in the description. I think that would be very fascinating to see how that goes. And Yeah, because of course one of the criticism of previous major events, be it an Olympics or a World Cup, is how, and I think the tragic pictures, particularly from Rio, from both the World Cup and the Olympics, where these stadiums are now just left abandoned, and they're pretty much, it's like something out of the book The World Without Us, where you've got wildlife and nature growing back through these stadiums. Not that that's a bad thing, but the fact that the stadium has gone to waste is a bad thing. And swimming pools which are now abandoned and stuff like that, and how it's had no benefit. I was just looking at at Qatar, so I have some data here. It's from actually our sponsors from World Energy and Meteorology Council, our sponsors who've got this educational tool called Teal, and it says that in basically the average annual temperature in Qatar from between the 50s and the 90s was about high 25, 26 degrees Celsius. But in the last 10 years, it's been averaging about 27, high 27 to getting up to 28 degrees Celsius. So in just that period, there's been a step up of an average of 2 degrees Celsius. And of course, and that could mean in extreme temperatures wise, your 40 degree day, could be pushing towards a 45, 50 degree day. And that, now you're getting beyond the human, well, 40 degrees already is, up to the point of human tolerance. So
I think 52 degrees is 50, human tolerance. Wow. And we push 50, 51 degrees at our highest temperatures,
What does that even feel like?
Ridiculous. I know, when the humidity hits, you're like, ah.
Oh my goodness.
At least when it's dry heat, it's not so bad. But when the humidity hits, it's game over.
Yeah, wow. Okay, let's bring this. I was going to say, bring this, cool this down a bit. We've already talked about your love of tea, so we'll skip that one, right? But we're going to spill the beans to finish off before we do We're All Geographers, and talk about your love of cats, because
oh my god, I love cats.
The first thing that happened as soon as you got on the call was like, "Hi, Kit," and then this big white and orange, like fluffy butt just appeared on the screen. So who's this fluffy critter that you have?
He's gone. That is Cashew. Cashew is our rescue cat. So obviously here in Qatar, there's a lot of stray animals and a lot of animals that need rescuing. I think being a very transient place, often, animals get left or sadly abandoned, and then there's no kind of neutering or anything. So there's a lot of kittens. And when, I've always had cats all my life. When we got here, I was like, I want to rescue a cat. Like, I feel like I've been put on this earth to rescue a cat out here.
So why are you in Qatar, Emily? Not to work in the national school, it's to go rescue a stray cat.
Yeah, absolutely. And when it must have been like a month in, once we'd settled, we went, Andy was like, let's go and get ourselves a rescue cat then. So we went to one of the kind of sanctuaries out here. And actually, I begrudge saying this, but Cashew went straight to Andy and was like snuggling him. And I was like, okay, this is the one, because he clearly really likes you. And now he's Andy's little boy, really. Like he obviously loves both of us, but he's Andy's little boy. Bless him.
So you said you had cats when you were growing up. So how many cats have you had in your life so far then?
So when I was really little, I had a female cat called Bobby. Okay. I was like obsessed with the name Bob, and my mum was like, should we call her Bobby? So I was like, Bobby fit. And then Bobby had her own kittens, and we kept one called Snowy, because naturally, a tabby cat is called Snowy.
Yeah.
And then they're kind of the circle of life happened, and that's that. And then we got another cat maybe when I was like 12, called Tuffy.
3 cats Tuffy. By 12, okay.
Tuffy, my mum used to read me this story when I was little called The Diary of a Killer Cat. And it was this ginger cat that obviously caused chaos. And we got this little ginger kitten, and I was like, we have to call it Tuffy, because you read me that story like every night about the ginger cat. So but sadly, Tuffy is gone now. Very sad times indeed. I loved him very much, but that's again just the circle of life, isn't it? But now we've got Cashew, and he is my, those cats, those memes that are like, be a cat in a millennial's life. Yeah. Like, he's literally my baby. He's a millennial's cat.
I love it. Yeah, I was thinking about ginger cats. We've got quite a few kids books featuring cat. We did have a cat called Sassafras was her name, but she was a turtle shell cat, but we just called her Fuzzy. But unfortunately we had to get rid of Fuzzy because when our eldest came along and was a little critter and was starting to crawl around and cruise, we wouldn't find Fuzzy anywhere but underneath the sofa or underneath the bed or something like that. She just did not take to having a child in the house, so we had to rehome her for her own sake, bless her. But I'm a dog person, I must say. But I did grow up when I was very, very little. So when we had our dog Ben, who was Alsatian dog and a police dog as well, we also had Badger, who was another tortoiseshell cat. So Badger and Ben, and they loved each other. They really got on really well with each other, which was really nice. We actually got a few pictures of Badger and Ben snuggling up to each other. That was quite nice. And then Badger went and lived in. We had to. I don't know why we got rid of Badger. Maybe I think we couldn't, because at that time the pennies were really tight. That was in the 80s when interest rates were starting to go up to 15%, and my parents were going without food. So they rehomed Badger, I think, for that reason, and she went to live as a farm cat, more or less, and a petting zoo cat, which she was quite happy there. So down in Harlem at Pet's Corner. So yeah, but okay, I love a little bit of the cats there. Right, get a picture of Cashew and stick it on Twitter, Em, and then we can all see what Cashew looks like.
I will do that. I've got so many.
Yeah, take your pick. Twitter limits you to 4, so just 4, please. Okay, last thing then. We are all geographers, so we're going to link you back to our previous guest before the Geographical Association Conference. But what we did at the Geographical Association Conference, I got people to link so many different words in previous episodes. So I did actually think about giving you a choice of anything previously, but I'm like, no, I've got to come back to continuity, right? And the last guest we had before the Geographical Association Conference was Mr. Sean Ferrick, who was an absolute delight. He would say not a geographer by any stretch of the imagination. Is like a YouTube content creator who's just absolutely lovely fun, but was actually I think Emily has given you a really, really interesting word to link to geography or to have a go at, and that is the word recharge.
Recharge.
Yeah, so to recharge. So however you so wish to take that, Emily. And if for folks who have listened to the podcast many times before, Emily can choose to link this word recharge to a geographical concept or geographical process, if she so wishes, or quite simply her own personal retake on the word recharge. But she's only got 30 seconds to do it. So, okay. Emily, what do you think? You ready to give this a go?
Yeah. So I can say loads of words. It's not just one word, is it?
So you just basically So what you do, you just basically talk about the word recharge in any way, shape, or form. Yeah. Okay, and you've got 30 seconds. So I'll have my timer for you so you can see. Right. Well, so whenever you're ready, you can make a start.
Okay, so thinking about everything that we talked about on the podcast, we are recharging the country of Qatar through the sustainability processes that we're trying, with their 2030 vision. So any of the movement towards renewable energy and renewable processes, that's recharging the country of Qatar.
Nice. You got a few more seconds if you want to fill up. What about yourself? What do you do to recharge?
I like to recharge with tea.
Tea? I knew you'd say that. That's right. And there you go, 30 seconds. Nicely done, Emily. Nicely done. So now you get to turn the tables on our following. You never get. Well, I don't know why I keep saying that. I keep saying these podcasts. You get to turn the table. No, you don't, because we don't go back in time. It's like I don't now go back to last week and say to Sean, "Hey, Sean, Emily's giving you." No, I don't know why I said that. You now get to pass on the baton to the next guest, where you can pick any word you so wish for them to do the same. So anything in mind?
Continuity.
Oh, okay. Continuity. You were so quick on that one. I haven't even got ready to write down. Continuity. I love it. Actually, Sean, you would love that one, continuity, because being a massive Star Trek fan and of all iterations of Star Trek, Sean loves talking about continuity, about, hang on a minute, that doesn't quite meet with Spock's history and what, So actually that would have been perfect for him. He could have gone on for miles with that one. But for the next guest, continuity, love it. Right. So then, we've given a shout out to the lovely Cashew. We've given a shout out to Andy, your husband, who's off kicking around a piece of leather at the moment. Anyone else you'd like to give a shout out to?
I absolutely love Jen on Twitter. She's fantastic.
Jen Monk, is that?
Yes, Jen Monk. She's fab.
Yeah.
And just my lovely friend Eve that I work with. I could not work in my role as head of house without her. She's my rock. So those are my two people, and obviously my mum.
Oh yes, who we did get a
Love
mention
her.
there, yeah. Hi Jen, it's lovely, and Jen, you always have an open invitation to come on. Whenever you say.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, social media. You have, I know you have a Twitter account, so if people want to connect with you.
Yes, I do. At Miss B Geography.
Miss B Geography. Yep. Yeah. So there we go. Well, Emily, this has been fascinating chatting to you, and lovely to chat to you. It's just so much fascinating insights. Just talking about your experiences in Doha there, and what great timing to kind of just come on like right at the beginning, and like, oh, they got the call to prayer right now.
Oh no, I know, and it just I love a challenge of a misconception. So
yes.
Really, I hope that from this podcast, if I can change anybody's opinions or open people's minds a little bit, like I really hope that's what we've done. So
well, you've definitely done it with me, that's for sure, and this is and it is genuinely hand on heart the main reason why I do this podcast is because I get to talk to wonderful people like yourself and have my misconceptions challenged and my horizons broadened as well.
Yeah, it's been such a pleasure as well, because you've really helped me with my kind of awareness of things too, so that's great.
Bless you. Well, let's make a deal, we will continue to do that for each other.
Yeah, I agree.
So thank you so much, Emily.
Thank you, Kit.
Thank you so much for listening. We hope you had fun. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe so more stories and experiences can drop into your favourite podcast app. If you fancy being a guest or have any feedback, follow us on Twitter at coffeegeogpod and send us a DM. Or you could email coffeeandgeog@geogramblings.com. Until next time, keep geogging.